I've always thought of my neighborhood as ordinary. Rows of cookie-cutter houses, trimmed hedges, and the occasional lawn ornament gave it an air of suburban normalcy. But everything changed the day the Johnsons moved out and the mysterious new tenant moved in. I first noticed her when I was watering my azaleas. She was tall, with an ethereal grace that didn't quite match the clumsy way she tried to bring groceries inside. Her hair shimmered, literally. It seemed to reflect the sunlight in shades of blue and silver, cascading like liquid light down her back. Her eyes were an unsettling shade of amber, glowing faintly even in daylight. "Welcome to the neighborhood," I called out, forcing my most polite smile. She turned to look at me, tilting her head as though trying to decipher my words. Then she smiled, a strange, almost mechanical expression that didn't reach her glowing eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice melodic but slightly off, as if she were mimicking human speech. From that moment on, I was hooked. Who was she? Why was she here? And, most importantly, was she even human? The signs. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't help but notice peculiarities. For starters, she only left the house at night, often wearing sunglasses and a large hat. Her mail consisted of unmarked packages that she retrieved with a furtive glance around the street. And then there was the strange hum emanating from her house during the late hours, a rhythmic pulse that made my teeth ache. My neighbor, old Mrs. Harrington, was the first to voice her suspicions. "She's up to no good," she whispered over the fence. "I saw her eating something that glowed." "Who eats glowing food?" I laughed it off, but deep down, I couldn't ignore the growing unease. The oddities piled up. She once spent an hour staring at a butterfly, her head tilting in jerky, unnatural movements. Another time, I saw her walking barefoot in the rain, her shimmering hair plastered against her skin but her feet somehow dry. The discovery. My curiosity got the better of me. One night, under the cover of darkness, I decided to investigate. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and my phone, I crept toward her house. The hum was louder than ever, resonating through the air like a living entity. Peeking through a side window, I saw her. She was standing in her living room, but it looked nothing like a normal room. The walls were covered in a metallic, pulsating material. Strange symbols floated in mid-air, glowing faintly. At the center of it all was a device, a towering, intricate machine that crackled with energy. She was operating it with movements too quick to follow, her hands a blur of blue light. And then she turned. For a moment, our eyes met. Hers glowed brighter, and I felt a jolt of fear, and something else. A connection. Before I could process it, she waved her hand, and the window went dark as if covered by an invisible curtain. The confrontation. The next morning, she was at my door. "We need to talk," she said, her melodic voice tinged with urgency. I stepped aside, heart pounding. She entered and sat on my couch, her movements fluid but alien. "You saw something you weren't meant to," she began. "But I mean no harm. Who are you?" I blurted out. "What are you?" She sighed, her glowing eyes dimming slightly. "My name is Lyra. I am from a place far beyond your understanding. My kind travels the galaxies, observing and learning. This house is my base of operations. The machine you saw is a beacon, a way for me to communicate with my people." "Why here? Why my neighborhood?" "Because it is unremarkable," she said simply. "A perfect place to blend in." "You're not blending in very well," I muttered, earning the first genuine smile I'd seen from her. The dilemma. Over the following weeks, Lyra and I formed an uneasy truce. She explained her mission in fragmented bits, always careful not to reveal too much. Her people, she said, were scientists, cataloging life across the universe. Earth was merely one of countless stops. But there was a problem. Her beacon, the device I'd seen, was malfunctioning. If she couldn't fix it, Her people would assume she was lost and abandon her. "I need your help," she said one evening, her usually calm demeanor showing a flicker of desperation. "The components I require are not available here. I have identified substitutes, but acquiring them will draw attention." It was a moral quandary. Helping her could mean risking exposure, possibly endangering myself and others. But leaving her stranded felt equally wrong. The plan. Together, we devised a plan. Using my connections and her uncanny ability to mimic human behavior, we began gathering the components she needed. It wasn't easy. There were close calls, a nosy cashier, a curious cop, but we managed to stay under the radar. As we worked, I learned more about her. She had a dry sense of humor and a fascination with Earth's wildlife. She once spent hours watching documentaries about dolphins, her glowing eyes wide with wonder. Despite her alien nature, she seemed human in her own way. The incident. Everything nearly fell apart the night the government showed up. A black SUV parked outside her house, and men in suits began knocking on doors, asking questions. One of them, a sharp-eyed agent, cornered me. "Have you noticed anything unusual about your neighbor?" he asked, his tone casual but probing. I forced a laugh. "Unusual? You mean besides her terrible taste in lawn ornaments?" He didn't smile. That night, Lyra and I worked frantically to finish the beacon. The hum grew louder, the air crackling with energy. Just as dawn broke, the machine roared to life, filling the room with a blinding blue light. "It's done," she said, her voice trembling with relief. "The goodbye." The next evening, Lyra came to say goodbye. She handed me a small, metallic object, its surface etched with the same strange symbols I'd seen in her house. "A token of gratitude," she said. "It will allow you to contact me, should you ever need to." "Will I ever see you again?" I asked, my throat tightening. She smiled, her glowing eyes softening. "Perhaps. But for now, I must go." I watched as she activated the beacon, her form dissolving into light. And then she was gone. The aftermath. The government agents disappeared shortly after Lyra did, their questions unanswered. Her house remained empty for months before being sold to a young couple. They never noticed the faint hum that lingered in the walls. As for me, life returned to its ordinary rhythm. But sometimes, late at night, I would stare at the metallic object she'd left behind, wondering about the vast universe she'd come from, and whether she was out there, among the stars, thinking about the unremarkable neighbor who had helped her go home. The final revelation. Months later, on a quiet evening, the metallic object suddenly began to glow, projecting a holographic image of Lyra. She looked different, more vibrant, and radiant than before. "Hello, my friend," her voice echoed softly. "I wanted to let you know I made it back safely. My people were astounded by your kindness and courage. You have shown us the best of humanity. One day, when the time is right, we will return to Earth. Until then, take care of your beautiful world." The image faded, leaving me awestruck. I placed the object on my shelf, a reminder that even in an ordinary neighborhood, extraordinary things could happen. And perhaps, one day, they would again.